All right, the first thing we're going to look at today is autonomous agents in Copilot Studio. So I have a little SharePoint list here that has just a title, which is Microsoft, Google, Apple, and then we have a URL that corresponds to the title Microsoft, Google, Apple. We want to create an autonomous agent that is able to return the URL based off of asking about the title. So that is what we are going to build. An autonomous agent that uses this list returns the URL based off the title. All right, so we have our SharePoint list. We're going to jump over to Copilot Studio and we are going to create a new agent by clicking New Agent. And here I'm just going to say create. I'm not going to let Gen AI create the agent. Once the agent is set up, we are going to add the SharePoint list I just showed you as knowledge. So here I'm going to select Add Knowledge, select SharePoint, and here we will just say this list, which I think we want through list here, and add. And this will take just a moment, and then we will have some SharePoint knowledge that our Copilot will be able to use. We do not want to let AI use its own gen knowledge for this, so we're going to disable that. And then we need orchestration enabled. So orchestration is going to allow the Gen AI to determine how to use this Copilot agent. So now that we have the orchestration enabled, we have the knowledge. The next thing we want to do is start adding description, instructions, and an action to make this bot work. So let's click Edit on the details, and Agent 2 is fine. Then what we want to do is add a description. So this agent, we will say you are an agent that assists with requests about the SharePoint list my test. So that's the name of our list. You will always provide the link when given a title. Let's just make sure URL title. So we have to say URL when given the title. So you're an agent that assists with requests about the SharePoint list my test. You will always provide the URL when given a title. The next thing we need is some instructions for this. So we'll type these out. You are a customer service agent tasked with managing answering requests. Should have copied and pasted this. I have it typed out, but it's a screenshot, so we'll just keep going forward here. You will be asked about a title, and you must follow these instructions exactly. Alright, 1. Use the action get item. We haven't built that yet. We're going to do that in a moment. 2. Return the row. 3. Always display the full URL found in the URL column. Alright, I'm going to save that. So now we have a description and instructions for our bot. So this is going to use an action we're going to build. It's going to return the row and always display the full URL found in the URL column. Alright, next thing that we want to do is add an action. So here we're going to use SharePoint, and we want to select get items. So get item, we're not going to know the key for the item we want, so we want get items. And this takes just a moment to configure the action. And we will be connecting to SharePoint, so we will say next. We'll come in and we're just going to finish this. We're going to modify this action in just a moment, but we'll let it create and finish before we modify it so the Gen AI can use it. Alright, so now we have SharePoint get items. Next thing we want to do is select that, and then we want to build this out. So we're going to change this to Copilot author authentication, Then what we want to do is name this get item, because that's what we told the agent to use in the instructions. So get item and get item. And now here we need to give this a description also, and the description will help the orchestration use this action. So we are going to say you will always return the row when provided the title. Return the entire URL found in the URL column. Let's try that. Inputs, let's take a look here. We do want the site address set as a value, and we want my team. And then for the list name, we actually also want to set this to set as value, because we don't want the Gen AI asking what list to use, so we're just going to use my list. We'll save that. And then select outputs, and what we want under outputs is to send a message immediately after running and let AI dynamically generate a message. And we will save the action. Alright, so now we have a agent that can use orchestration with the description and instructions and knowledge of the SharePoint list and an action. So let's go ahead and test this out. Alright, the next thing we want to do is create a trigger. So we're going to make this an autonomous agent like we mentioned at the beginning. It's going to be a little silly, but now we want a trigger. So here we're just going to trigger on when an email arrives. So this is the easiest one to kind of demo and show in my opinion. So when a new email arrives, we are going to have this bot, this autonomous agent, do a little work through some actions, including the action we already created called get item. So let's go ahead and create the trigger. And here the folder will just be the inbox of my test user. And here we'll say when the subject says URL, we're going to then run this trigger. So we'll set that up. That's going to create a Power Automate flow. It's going to return the body to the bot to be able to use. And of course our body, and when we trigger this, is going to just have a company in the body like Microsoft, Google, and then we should get the URL returned once we use this trigger. So let's give this a moment to create. Alright, so that created, so now we're going to test it. So if we click here, test trigger, we don't have any runs of this yet because we haven't sent any emails. So I'm going to grab the email address of this test user. I'll open Gmail up here on a separate window and send an email to this address. So give me just a moment. The subject, of course, has to say URL, and then in the body, we are just going to put Microsoft. So just to show you a little bit what that looks like, it's real simple. Just a URL, or sorry, just a subject URL, the body, and then that to address. Right, it just sent that email. When that arrives over here, this is an old one, let's get rid of that, and we'll get this new email in just a moment. I will check back in as soon as we have that email. Alright, we have the email with the URL with Microsoft. So now if we go back to our agent and we click that same test trigger, we can see this. So now if we say start testing, what we should see is our action get item execute based off the body of the email. So you can see trigger detected. Here we are going to use get item, and let's see what we get returned. The title is Microsoft and the URL is Microsoft. So cool, that works. So now we have, based off when we get an email, this agent knows what to do. So now let's do something else. Let's go back to the overview and let's create a second action to then send an email with the URL back to the person who sent the original email asking with this subject URL and with the body. So let's send the original sender an email back. All right, the next thing we're going to do is add an action. And here we want to send an email. Send an email. Alright, so send an email v2 is what we want. Office 365 for Outlook. This takes a moment. And here, I'm just going to say next, and we'll go back and clean it up and correct it here in just a moment after it creates. Alright, so now we have Office 365 send an email v2. First thing I'm going to do is make that a little bit simpler name. We're just going to say send an email. Alright, so you will always use this. You will always use send an email to email the URL. Let's just try that. And here I do want Copilot. Our inputs are the two. We're going to leave that because we're going to let the bot do it. Leave all this. The body, yes, we'll leave everything. And outputs, send a response with AI. Save that. Let's test this. Well, let's do one other thing before we test this. I think what we'll have to do is go to the overview, edit the bot, and let's say always use send an email to email the full URL found in the URL column. Let's try that. So let's save this, see if this works. So now what we should be able to do is test this, and let's see if it will send an email. So here we are, the new email just arrived. Now we're going to get the item, which is the URL. Okay, let's see what we do next. Oh, it did not like that. So let's go try to figure out how to get the agent to proceed and send an email. Alright, so I do have this working. What we had to do is change the instruction set a little bit for this autonomous agent. So here, notice we have parse the body of the email, use the action get item, use the action send an email to write an email response to the original sender of the email, provide the URL from the URL column only. The email should be friendly and short. Please reply with this made up number. Also, do not include any citations. So here, we're going to test this fully autonomously. So we do need to publish this bot. We don't need to provide any channel for it, of course, because we're not going to interact with it. It's just going to spring into action when the trigger occurs and then perform the steps that we are telling it to perform, hopefully. So let me jump over to my email. We'll get rid of these from testing before. And we're going to send a brand new email. Send it to the same inbox. We won't use Gmail this time. We have view account, so I can copy this. Alright, grab that. Oops. Subject URL and Microsoft. Alright, we'll send that, and in a moment, okay, so that arrived, and in a moment we should see an email pop in with the URL. How long we have to wait could be a minute or two. Alright, as you can see, the email came back. Hello Jason, here's the URL you requested. If you have any further questions with that made up number. So another interesting thing about the bot is if we go on the activity tab, we can see some of the automations and get some more information about what happened. So notice I do have a few incompletes here where the session failed. I'm not going to dig into those. We do see some completed where we can go back and look at what happened, who the message was sent to, etc. So remember that activity tab can be very useful in troubleshooting your autonomous agents and your bots. I plan to make more of these videos on Copilot Studio. I really enjoy it. It would be awesome if you all subscribed, hit the like button, and we will bring you some more very cool videos about creating agents in Copilot Studio.